Philadelphia is known for its broken bell, its creamy cheese, and its cheesy steak. But it also has plenty of fine sports venues. With that being said, here are the stadiums and arenas of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. We'll start off at Lincoln Financial Field, which opened 21 years ago as a replacement for the Vet, which was a multi-purpose stadium that was despised by many. It's home to the Eagles, and the design was supposedly inspired by the eagle. Well, it does have these sleek wing-like roofs. They don't have feathers, but they do provide a bit of shelter and bounce a bit of that crowd noise back into the stadium. I can't really spot any other eagle-inspired design features, but some other inspirations were the city's historic architecture, hence the hits of brick. There's also plenty of exposed steel representing the city's bridges. I don't know, it looks good either way. One strange bit of history here is that for a brief period in the early days, spectators actually weren't allowed to bring cheesesteaks into the stadium, owing to safety concerns. The ban was finally lifted after scientists confirmed that provolone is not explosive. Next door is Citizens Bank Park, which also replaced the Vet. The Eagles and the Phillies sort of banded together to try and get their own replacement stadiums. It clearly worked. MLB ballparks usually have a ton of quirky features. The most notable one here is probably the larger-than-life Liberty Bell that lights up after every Phillies home run. Also, whilst it's not on the levels of Wrigley Field, there is plenty of ivy action in center field. Some less quirky but more useful aspects are the open 360-degree concourse, which allows spectators to continue watching the game while they're on the way to purchase a non-combustible cheesesteak. And even though the ballpark is a few miles away from downtown, spectators are still treated to a great view of the Philly skyline. Completing the trio of sports venues that comprise the South Philadelphia Sports Complex is Wells Fargo Center. During the planning and construction phase, this place was called Spectrum 2, in reference to its predecessor. But I guess Spectrum 2 sounds a bit too much like a medical diagnosis, so Wells Fargo Center it is. It now shares its name with about a dozen skyscrapers across the country. Currently, the arena is undergoing a multi-stage $300 million renovation. That is set to be completed in 2026. Of course, it's still being used in the meantime. It's a very busy venue when it comes to sports, but of course it hosts plenty of concerts as well. The record number of sellouts by a musical act is currently 56. You might be surprised to hear that it's held by Bruce Springsteen, a singer who has a song about Philadelphia. It's called The Streets of Philadelphia. I believe it's from his critically acclaimed album, Non-Combustible Cheesesteaks. Franklin Field is named after Benjamin Franklin, who actually founded the University of Pennsylvania. Having opened in 1895, this is the oldest American football stadium that's still in operation. In recent years it's undergone a renovation, albeit one that is akin to something you'd see at a cathedral or palace, because it was focused on restoring the structural integrity of the concrete stands, whilst maintaining the same aesthetical characteristics. Which is good because it's a beautiful stadium. I particularly like the field house beyond the northwestern end zone. Normally a running track is looked down upon by football fans, but this one is special as it hosts the Penn Relays, which is the oldest and largest track competition in the country, so it's obviously not going anywhere. Speaking of cathedrals, the Palestra is colloquially referred to as the Cathedral of College Basketball, a title which is actually not all that hyperbolic. It's earned it. Not just because of its cathedral-like exterior, but the Palestra is one of the oldest basketball arenas in the world. Back when it opened in 1927, it was one of the largest arenas of any kind in the world. It's not even close to that nowadays. It's actually gotten slightly smaller, and its competition has gotten much larger. But still, it remains one of the most sacred theaters of college basketball. One feature that people really love is how close the seats come to the court. Liacouras Center. This arena was originally called the Apollo of Temple, a pretty cool name considering it's home to Temple University's basketball team. However, they changed the name in honor of a former Temple president. So that's not quite as cool, but I guess he was partially responsible for the building of the arena, because they were previously playing at an arena with a capacity of less than 4,000. This place holds over 10,000, and they do put it to good use. Speaking of which, it was put to good use during the pandemic where it was transformed into a hospital. Subaru Park. Now that's a fitting name because you'll probably need a reliable car like a Subaru if you frequent this ground, because it's situated at a considerable distance from the city centre in a place called Chester, a town known for its love of corn-based snack foods, I believe. More specifically, it's situated right by the Commodore Barry Bridge. Speaking of Delaware, the border is around 3 miles away. How lucky the people of Chester are to live so close to the magical land of Delaware. As you can see, the bridge is an overbearing presence at this stadium, which was actually designed to maximize the view of the bridge, while still including a significant amount of roof coverage. Not a bad little stadium. Villanova Stadium. Villanova is a much smaller and less prestigious university than the other two we've seen, and their football stadium reflects that. There are about 50 other stadiums in the country that look almost identical to this. But to be fair, the street-facing side of the stadium does have a rather nice facade, and while it might not be as old as Franklin Field, 97 years is nothing to be... I've forgotten what that phrase is. Nothing to be sneezed at? Scoffed at? I guess? Nothing to be... next door is Finneran Pavilion, which in stark contrast to the football stadium, is actually very distinctive. Most notably the roof, which is a hyperbolic paraboloid, or in layman's terms, rather pointy. That pointiness is carried over to the seating itself, as the seating follows the shape of the roof. Very cool. Still, it is a relatively small venue, so when large crowds are expected, the Wildcats play at Wells Fargo Center. To be honest, I much prefer this little venue. It too was renovated in the not too distant past, and it's got a hyperbolic paraboloid roof, don't you know? I mentioned Delaware earlier. Well, Greater Philadelphia does actually include Wilmington, Delaware, a small city that does have one stadium that meets the capacity requirements for this video. So why not include it? Daniel Froley Stadium is home to the Blue Rocks, a minor league baseball team. I believe this is the second venue we've seen that was named after a politician. Daniel Froley, a former mayor of Wilmington, is not quite as famous as Benjamin Franklin, and he's certainly not the most well-known politician from Wilmington, but he has a ballpark named after him. I don't think Biden does. A freeway overpass and its plentiful billboards is not exactly an ideal backdrop, but other than that, it does seem like a nice place to watch a game. And those were the stadiums of Philadelphia and Wilmington. Thanks for watching, have a good one. I wonder if anyone's going to point out that Philadelphia cream cheese is not from Philadelphia. Probably.